friends. Have you bought this? Have you bought his arguments? How he changes the framework, gives these fancy smoke and mirrors, and he distracts you from the real question here. What are we here to debate about? We are here to debate about the resolution. Should U.S. foreign policy be guided by American exceptionalism? Simply changing the resolution, affirming in the borderlines, just shows you how this American exceptionalism, delusional fantasy, has warped his mind. He goes on to argue that, we need to change this. By accepting mine is the only way to accept. But in the end, you're still accepting American exceptionalism. Look at this. I'm going to follow the rules of debate. The rules of LD debate. The negative doesn't have to provide solvency. We just have to provide clash and show why we should not accept his side of the resolution. I provide no smoke and mirrors. I don't try and distract you from the question. The reality is, American exceptionalism will continue to do ills, not only abroad, but to you. Today they're groping. Tomorrow they're strip searching. The next day we're walking up anyone who isn't American. You must negate American exceptionalism because it is the first step. It will open your eyes. You will leave here. You are the future leaders of this country. You intellectual bourgeoisie. When you leave here, when you become the politicians, the leaders of this country, you'll be aware of all the evils of American exceptionalism, and you can choose to change it. Unlike those who are sitting out there text messaging on their phone. They're not here to become educated about the evils of American exceptionalism. He argues we're distracting ourselves from the real question here. It's not the job of the negative to ask alternative questions. I'm forced to choose one question. Should we use American exceptionalism? The answer is clearly no. Once again, smoke and mirrors, adjusting the framework to get his desired outcome, an affirmative ballot. Stand up against these changes. Stand up against these smoke and mirrors. Don't let him convince you otherwise. Don't fall for his tricks. Calling me Nancy Reagan and saying, just say no. So what? Who cares? Start now. And at this question, the answer is no. Now, normally I would never do this. In fact, it might hurt a little bit that I'm about to say this. Nancy Reagan might have been right. Look what he made me do. He argues that American exceptionalism keeps reproducing itself, and yes, I agree. Unless you stand up right now, unless you stand up and reject these smoke and mirrors, draw your line in the sand, you continue to be brainwashed. He argues that doesn't mean any real change. So what that he votes negative? I want these young minds, I want your mostly young minds, to leave here with this eye-opening experience that American exceptionalism is not the only way. That with this resolution, when measuring U.S. foreign policy, we should not use American exceptionalism because it will distract you from the things that we are doing here at home. Japanese internment, Operation Wetback, the like. It'll only be a matter of time before historians cover something else. Which one am I? I implore you to reject this notion that has stripped you of your civil rights. To strip you of what it means to be an American. And those of you who do aspire to be like America. This is a great country, but sometimes we do things wrong. And the first step is accepting that we're not always right. Being open to alternative ideas. I offer only one voter today, because it's ultimately all that matters. Do we continue to be warped by this American exception, accepting it, smoke and mirrors of our government? Or do we choose this moment, this time, however insignificant I am, however insignificant we are, to stand up? I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but it has to start sometime. has to start someplace. Are you going to be that start? Thank you. Once again, when the round is over, please don't consult with anybody. Just circle your decision, give us an RFD. When those are drawn, we've got a lot of fun.
Holding job. It's beautiful.
You're watching it, aren't you? You're not even looking at that, you're just watching the video.
Okay.
Oh, poor Lane.
Is anyone not ready? Yes. I'm not ready. Yeah, to repeat what he said, like, this is a 3-minute speech. After I'm done, like, don't consult anybody, whatever he's done. I'll let you get off.
Sorry.
And to echo what Carl and Mr. Brenner said, yeah. Although a heated debate, certainly a lot of fun. So yeah, I'll take you on again in January. I hope you guys have enjoyed it for the most part. Okay, is everyone ready? My opponent beseeches you to draw a line in the sand. What he doesn't tell you is what that means. When you draw a line in the sand, you have just separated yourself from someone that used to be an American, that used to be a human being. Are you an American because you have citizenship? Or are you an American because you are on U.S. soil? And does that notion of Americanness even matter? See, these are the questions he's not getting at. You can go start a revolution, but all you're doing is begetting more violence upon more human beings. And that's the problem with straight-up revolution when you don't cop to what you're already a part of. I'm not brainwashing you. I'll tell you straight up that American exceptionalism is awful. Yes, it's probably the worst thing ever. But when I go home today, I'm going to drive on highways that were like they're built on land that was taken from Native Americans, right? I'm going to get in my car that was subsidized with tax money via a capitalist system. I'm going to probably stop in a fast food restaurant that there's a high probability was built with cheap, illegal immigrant labor. I'm going to turn on my TV and watch football using fossil fuels that we probably took from another country. And yes, on Monday morning, I will teach my students in a tie that America is awesome because it's my job. And you know what? A lot of those things I mentioned, you probably do too. So go ahead and vote negative. Feel like you've made a change. Or think really, really hard. Think to yourself, are you privy, are you part of American exceptionalism? I would argue you are. If you are, negating is meaningless. The first thing we have to do to deal with American exceptionalism is to deal with dualism. Because you know what? There's no exceptional America if we stop trying to delineate America from everything else. There's no violence between different racial groups if we just view each other as human beings. So step one is copying to the fact that we are all a part of the problem. Step two is looking for how do we get out. And that's by affirming in the borderlands, embracing the mestiza consciousness. I guess I should point out, if you like evidence and arguments and flowing, I probably already won your ballot. Extend everything he drops. But I'll end with this. He says that I'm calling you a bunch of sheep. Maybe you are. Maybe I am too. But if we reject dualism, there's really no difference between a sheep and a ram. A black sheep isn't bad if we don't delineate it from all the other white sheeps. If you reject basic dualistic ontology first, you've taken the first step to real change. Maybe I use smoke and mirrors, but maybe that's what you have to do to see the truth. Thank you.